Welcome back to Bardic Sleep Stories. As the world outside grows quiet and the shadows lengthen, we return once more to the sanctuary of the past. Take a deep, slow breath, feeling the air fill your lungs before releasing it fully. Let your shoulders drop, allow the muscles in your face to soften, and feel the weight of your body sink into the comfort of your bed. You are safe, you are still, and you are ready to travel through time. The stories we tell here are long, steady, and detailed. They are designed to occupy the wandering mind with the gentle rhythm of history, providing a path that leads away from the worries of today and toward a deep, restorative sleep. There is no pressure to follow every word or reach the end of the chronicle. Whether you drift away in 5 minutes or 50, the story will remain here, a constant and calming presence in the dark. Tonight, we immerse ourselves in a grand and sprawling narrative. We shall set aside the haste of the modern age to observe the slow turning of the wheel of power, focusing on the textures of life, the echoes of ancient stone, and the quiet legacy of those who came before us. Our journey this evening leads us into the heart of a vast and storied heritage. We begin our exhaustive exploration of the Night Watchman of a floating city. We find ourselves high above the surface of the earth, resting within the buoyant stone foundations of the city of Aethelgard. It is the hour of the wolf, that deep indigo stretch of the night when the moon is at its zenith and the winds are most still. In a small, circular room located in the western turret of the watchhouse, a man named Silas opens his eyes. He wakes not to the sound of roosters or traffic, but to the gentle rhythmic creaking of the city shifting against the wind. It is a sound like the breathing of a great wooden ship, comforting and constant. Silas sits up in his bunk. The air in the room is crisp and thin, carrying the distinct metallic scent of ozone and high-altitude frost. Through the porthole window he sees only a canvas of stars, brighter and sharper here than they ever appear on the ground below. He slides his legs out from under the heavy quilt, his feet finding the cold stone floor. He is the guardian of the drift, the walker of the cloud streets, and his shift is about to begin. Silas stands and moves to the wash basin, pouring water from a ceramic pitcher. The water is ice cold, drawn from the condensation collectors on the roof, and it shocks the sleep from his face. He begins the slow, methodical process of dressing for the high air. The uniform of the Skywatch is designed for insulation and protection against the biting winds of the upper atmosphere. First, he pulls on a base layer of thick, grey wool, soft against the skin but tightly woven to trap body heat. Over this, he fastens a tunic of quilted leather, dyed the color of the midnight sky to blend with the shadows. He laces his boots, which are heavy and lined with fur, the soles reinforced with iron studs to grip the potentially icy cobblestones of the floating avenues. Pull, loop, tighten. The ritual is familiar, a sequence of movements he has performed for 20 years. He lifts his heavy greatcoat from the hook. It is a masterpiece of tailoring, with a high collar that can be turned up to cover the ears, and weighted hems to prevent it from flapping in the gale. He buttons it, starting from the bottom and working his way up. Click, click, click. The buttons are brass, polished to a dull shine. Finally, he reaches for his badge of office, the star lantern. This is not a flame-burning lamp, for fire is dangerous in the high winds. Instead, it is a cage of brass and glass containing a sphere of trapped bioluminescence, a cool, steady blue light harvested from the luminous fungi of the cavern districts. He turns the dial on the base. The light pulses once, then settles into a soft azure glow. It does not cut the darkness so much as push it gently aside. He picks up his staff, a sturdy length of ironwood tipped with silver, and opens the heavy oak door of his quarters. Creak, thud. He steps out into the corridor. The silence of the watchhouse is absolute. Leaving the warmth of the barracks, Silas steps out onto the western promenade, and the reality of his world rushes to meet him. The wind here is a living thing, a constant flowing river of air that rushes past his ears with a low, hollow whistle. He is standing on the edge of a continent of stone that hovers 3,000 feet above the earth. To his left are the sleeping houses of the city, their slate roofs glistening with frost. To his right is the void. He walks to the railing, a waist-high barrier of wrought iron that separates the pavement from the sheer drop. He looks down, far below. Through gaps in the drifting cloud layer, he can see the dark patchwork of the ground, forests that look like moss. But mostly, he sees the clouds. They are vast, silent mountains of white vapor that drift slowly beneath the city, illuminated by the moonlight. Some of the wisps rise up, curling over the edge of the promenade like ghostly fingers, dampening his face with mist. Step, step, step. His iron-shod boots ring softly on the stone. He begins his patrol. The city of Aethelgard is a collection of islands connected by arched bridges, and he is currently on the district of the Weavers. The buildings here are tall and narrow, built of pale limestone that glows in the starlight. The windows are dark. The weavers are asleep, their looms silent, their shuttles still. Silas walks with a slow, measured gait. He is not looking for criminals. Crime is rare in a city where there is nowhere to run. He is looking for structural integrity. He checks the anchor chains, massive links of steel that bolt the buildings to the bedrock of the floating island. He inspects the mortar for cracks caused by the thermal expansion of the day. He is the caretaker of the stone, ensuring that the city remains solid amidst the fluid air. Silas reaches the end of the promenade and steps onto the Bridge of Sighs, a slender arch of white marble that spans the gap between the Weavers' District and the Scholars' Quarter. The bridge has no supports beneath it. It is held in place by tension and the inherent magical buoyancy of the rock. As he walks across the center of the span, he feels the slight, gentle undulation of the structure. It sways imperceptibly, riding the air currents like a boat on a calm sea. This movement would terrify a ground dweller, but to Silas, it is the heartbeat of the city. He pauses in the middle of the bridge. The silence here is profound. Suspended over the empty air, there is no echo. The sound of his own breathing is the loudest thing in the universe. He raises his lantern. The blue light reflects off the polished marble balustrade. Below his feet, a flock of nightwings, large silent owls that nest in the understructure of the city, glides past, their white feathers blending with the clouds. He watches them dive into the abyss, hunting for moths in the lower updrafts. He continues across the bridge. Tap, tap, tap. His staff strikes the stone. He reaches the Scholars' Quarter. The architecture changes here. The buildings are domed and heavy, housing the great libraries and observatories. The air smells different too, scented with the dust of old paper and the faint, acrid tang of alchemical experiments. A single window in a high tower glows with orange candlelight. An astronomer is awake tracking the movement of the planets. Silas nods to the light, a silent greeting from one watcher of the night to another. He checks the bridge moorings on the far side, ensuring the heavy iron pins are seated deep in the stone sockets. Everything is secure. The connection holds. Moving deeper into the Scholars' Quarter, Silas approaches the plaza of the Astrolabe. In the center of this circular courtyard stands the great mechanism, a towering construction of brass gears, spinning rings, and crystal lenses. It is the city's navigational heart. Aethelgard is not stationary. It drifts on the magnetic currents of the planet, following a slow annual migration path. The Astrolabe tracks this drift. Silas stops before the main dial, a face of polished copper 10 feet across. He wipes the frost from the glass cover with his gloved hand. Rub, squeak. He shines his lantern on the needles. The altitude needle points to 3,050 feet. Steady. The drift needle indicates a slow movement to the south-southwest. This is correct for the season. He takes a small leather-bound logbook from his coat pocket. He removes a pencil attached by a string. He writes down the readings: time, third watch, altitude, stable, drift, nominal. The scratching of the pencil is loud in the quiet plaza. Scritch, scratch. He looks at the gears of the mechanism. They turn with a silent, oiled precision, powered by the atmospheric pressure. He checks the lubrication vats at the base of the machine. The reservoirs of oil are full, the machine is healthy. He feels a sense of satisfaction. This city is a marvel of engineering and magic, a delicate balance of forces, and tonight, the balance is perfect. He closes the book and tucks it away. He looks up at the central spire of the Astrolabe, which points directly at the North Star. The star is fixed, unmoving. The city rotates slowly around it. Silas resumes his walk, circling the plaza once to ensure no debris has blown into the gears, before heading down the narrow alleyway that leads toward the residential gardens. The scent of frost-bitten roses begins to mix with the cold air. Leaving the mechanical precision of the Astrolabe behind, Silas enters the Garden of the High Winds. This is a public park, but unlike the gardens of the surface, it is enclosed within a high wall of glass panes, set in iron frames to shield the delicate plants from the freezing gale. He opens the gate with a heavy iron key. Click, clack, scree. He steps inside and closes it quickly to preserve the warmth. The air here is instantly different, humid, still and rich with the smell of damp soil and chlorophyll. It is a pocket of endless spring. Silas walks along the gravel path. The crunch of his boots is muffled by the density of the foliage. He is surrounded by plants that grow only at this altitude. Cloud lilies with petals as white and translucent as vapor, and star moss that clings to the rocks and glows with a faint green phosphorescence. He pauses by a bed of singing ferns. These delicate fronds vibrate slightly, emitting a low, harmonious hum when they are healthy. He leans in to listen. Thrum. The sound is steady. They are content. He checks the thermal vents, small brass grates in the ground that release heat generated by the city's core. He holds his hand over one. A gentle stream of warm air rises up, warming his frozen palm. It is working. He walks to the central fountain. The water here does not fall. Due to a localized gravity enchantment, it floats in globes of liquid that drift lazily upward before bursting and raining back down into the basin. Plip, plop, splash. He watches the water cycle for a moment, mesmerizing and slow. This garden is the lungs of the district, purifying the air and providing a sanctuary of green in a world of grey stone and white cloud. He checks the glass roof panels high above. They are intact, holding back the cold. He nods. The life of the city is secure. Silas exits the garden through the far gate, stepping back into the chill of the open air. He is now approaching the Edge District, the residential area that sits on the very perimeter of the floating island. The streets here are narrow and wind along the cliff face. The houses are built directly into the rock, their balconies hanging out over the abyss. He walks carefully here. The mist is thicker, curling over the edge like steam from a cauldron. He reaches a section of the railing that is known as the Lover's Outlook. It is a small semicircular extension of the pavement, jutting out into the void. He checks the ironwork. He grips the top rail and gives it a firm shake. Rattle, clank. It is solid. He shines his lantern down at the base of the railing, looking for rust or stress fractures in the metal. The salt from the clouds can corrode iron over time. He spots a small patch of flaking paint. He makes a note in his book. Sector 4, Railing 12. Scrape and repaint. He continues along the cliff path. Below him he hears the sound of the wind chimes. These are massive bronze tubes, some 20 feet long, hung beneath the city by the original architects. As the wind passes through them, they create deep, resonant tones that vibrate through the rock. Tonight, the wind is gentle, so the chimes are singing a low, mournful song. Bong, bong. It is the lullaby of Aethelgard. The residents of these cliff houses claim they cannot sleep without it. To Silas, it serves a practical purpose. A change in the pitch of the chimes warns of a coming storm. Tonight, the pitch is true. The weather holds. Further along the Edge district, Silas comes to the Cloud docks. This is where the airships, the skiffs, the galleons and the gliders are moored. At this hour, the docks are quiet, a forest of tall wooden masts rising into the dark sky. The ships bump gently against the wooden piers, buoyed by the liftwood in their hulls. Creak, bump, squeak. Silas walks down the main pier. He checks the mooring lines. They are thick ropes of hemp, taut with the strain of holding the ships against the breeze. He tests one with his hand, feeling the tension. It is tight, but not dangerously so. He walks past a small merchant skiff named the Silver Kestrel. Its cargo of exotic spices from the southern mountains is covered with a tarp, smelling of cinnamon and nutmeg even through the canvas. He checks the gas lamps that line the dock. These are filled with buoyant hydrogen gas. He ensures the glass is clean and the flames are shielded. At the end of the pier stands the dockmaster's bell, a large bronze bell used to signal arrivals in the fog. Silas gives the clapper a gentle tap, just enough to ensure it isn't frozen to the rim. Ding, the sound is crisp. He looks out into the open sky. In the distance, he sees the navigation lights of a late freighter approaching, a pattern of red and green drifting slowly towards the city. He watches it for a moment, judging its approach vector. It is on a safe course. He turns back towards the city. The docks are secure, the commerce of the sky sleeps, ready to resume with the sunrise. Leaving the docks, Silas turns inland, heading towards the industrial heart of the city. The steamworks. As he walks, the silence of the residential districts is replaced by a low, rhythmic thumping sound. Thump, hiss, thump, hiss. This is the sound of the great pumps that circulate water and heat throughout the floating island. He enters the main pump house through a side door. The air inside is hot and smells of oil, brass, and wet stone. He is greeted by the sight of massive pistons, shining with grease, moving up and down in slow, powerful strokes. He walks along the metal catwalk that overlooks the machinery. He is not a mechanic. There is a night engineer on duty for repairs, but it is the watchman's job to verify that the engineer is awake. He finds the engineer, a woman named Kaylin, sitting at a small desk reading a book by the light of a glow tube. She looks up and waves. Silas waves back. No words are needed. He checks the pressure gauges on the main wall. The needles are all in the green zone. Steam pressure, 80 psi. Water flow, optimal. He walks past the boiler array, where the fires are banked for the night. The heat radiating from the iron doors is intense. He unbuttons the top button of his greatcoat. He checks the fire buckets of sand hanging on the wall. They are full. He checks the emergency release valves. They are unobstructed. The steamworks is the warm, beating heart of the city, and tonight it beats with a steady, strong rhythm. He exits through the far door, stepping back into the cold night air, the sweat on his forehead cooling instantly. Silas now makes his way to the highest point in the city, the Tower of Winds. This is a slender spire that rises from the roof of the town hall. It is a long climb. He opens the door at the base of the tower and begins to ascend the spiral staircase. Step, step, step. The stairs are stone, worn smooth by centuries of watchmen. There are 300 steps. He climbs with a slow, steady pace, breathing rhythmically. He passes the bell chamber, where the great iron bells of the city hang silent in the dark. He climbs higher, past the clock mechanism, where the giant gears click and whir, counting down the seconds of the night. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Finally, he reaches the observation deck at the very top, He opens the hatch and climbs out. The wind here is stronger, tugging at his coat. He is now above the rooftops. He has a 360-degree view of Aethelgard. The city is spread out below him like a map of light and shadow. He sees the blue glow of the street lamps, the yellow squares of the windows, the dark void of the canals. He walks to the edge of the parapet. He pulls a brass telescope from its leather case on his belt. He extends it. Slide, click. He raises it to his eye. He scans the horizon. He is looking for storm heads, towering cumulonimbus clouds that can threaten the city with lightning. He sweeps the horizon from north to south. The sky is clear. The stars are hard and bright. He lowers the telescope. He stands there for a moment, the king of the high air, watching over his sleeping kingdom. He feels a profound sense of peace. Up here, away from the noise and the people, the world makes sense. It is just wind, stone, and light. He is the solitary guardian, the silent protector, ensuring that the city floats safely through the ocean of the night. Silas lingers for a moment longer on the observation deck of the Tower of Winds, the wind tugging gently at the hem of his greatcoat, before he turns to begin his descent. He re-enters the hatch, pulling the heavy iron door shut against the gale. Clang, latch. The silence of the tower interior returns, broken only by the rhythmic, mechanical heartbeat of the city's great clock. He descends the spiral stairs until he reaches the chamber of the escapement. This is the room that houses the brain of the timekeeping mechanism. The air here is warmer, heated by friction and the smell of fine whale oil. In the center of the room hangs the pendulum, a massive brass bob the size of a wine barrel, suspended on a rod of invar steel. It swings with a terrifying, majestic slowness. Swish, pause, swish, pause. Silas watches it. It is the metronome of Aethelgard. Every swing marks 2 seconds of life in the floating city. He steps closer to the escapement wheel, a giant toothed gear that releases the energy of the falling weights. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound is loud and percussive, a physical impact that vibrates through the soles of his boots. He checks the lubrication cups on the main bearings. They are full of clear, golden oil. He checks the temperature compensator, a grid of mercury vials designed to keep the pendulum swinging true despite the freezing cold. The mercury is level. He takes out his logbook. Clock mechanism. True. Beat. Steady. He rests his hand for a second on the cool stone wall, feeling the vibration of the tick. It is a comforting rhythm, a reminder that order prevails over chaos. He continues down the stairs, passing the heavy iron weights that drive the clock, hanging in their long shaft like sleeping giants. He reaches the ground floor and exits the tower, the sound of the ticking fading behind him as the heavy door seals, leaving him once again in the silent, moonlit street. At the base of the tower, Silas finds himself in the scriptorium district, the intellectual quiet zone of the city. Here, the streets are paved not with cobblestones, but with blocks of cork and rubber to dampen the sound of footsteps, ensuring the scholars are never disturbed. Step, silence, step. He walks past the great library, a fortress of knowledge built from dark basalt. The building has no windows on the lower levels, only high, narrow slits near the roof to let in the starlight. Silas approaches the main entrance, the Gate of Silence. It is a massive double door carved with reliefs of owls and scribes, sealed for the night. He checks the humidity seals around the doorframe. These are strips of treated leather that swell when damp, preventing the cloud mist from entering and damaging the precious scrolls within. He runs his gloved finger along the seal. It is tight and dry. Slide, check. He moves to the pneumatic exchange, a brass terminal on the exterior wall where urgent messages are sent and received via air pressure tubes. He opens the inspection hatch. Creak, hiss. Inside, the brass cylinders sit in their racks, waiting for the morning. There is no hiss of escaping air. The system is pressurized and holding. He closes the hatch. Click. He looks up at the gargoyles perched on the eaves. These are not monsters, but rain catchers, designed to channel the condensation away from the walls. A single drop of water falls from a stone beak and lands on the pavement. Plip. It is the only sound in the district. Silas nods to the silent building. The knowledge of the ages is safe, sleeping in the dry dark, protected from the damp and the noise of the floating world. Leaving the hushed streets of the scriptorium, Silas crosses a narrow suspension bridge to the aviary quarter. This district is built on a series of smaller satellite islets tethered to the main city by thick chains. As he steps onto the bridge, the smell of the air changes, becoming sharp with the scent of pine shavings and feathers. This is the home of the city's messengers and hunters. The buildings here are essentially giant, ornate bird cages, constructed of wooden lattice and wire mesh to allow the free flow of air. Silas approaches the royal roost, the largest of these structures. Inside, hundreds of sky falcons and ether owls are sleeping. He shines his lantern on the lower perches, keeping the light dim so as not to wake them. The birds are huddled together for warmth, their heads tucked under their wings, transforming them into balls of soft grey fluff. Rustle, coo. A single owl opens one large amber eye to look at him, then closes it again. Silas walks around the perimeter of the roost. He is checking the windbreaks, canvas tarps that are rolled down at night to shield the birds from the direct draft. One of the tarps has come loose at the corner, flapping slightly. Flap, snap. Silas reaches up. He grabs the brass grommet and pulls the canvas taut. Pull, stretch. He hooks it securely over the iron cleat. Loop, tighten. The flapping stops. The roost is secure. He listens for a moment. He can hear the soft, collective breathing of the flock, a gentle susurration that sounds like the wind in the trees. These birds are the lifeline of the city, carrying letters to the ground and to other floating enclaves. Tonight they rest, gathering their strength for the long dives of the morning. Silas crosses back to the main island and heads towards the baker's ward. Even at this hour, long before the sun threatens the horizon, this district is beginning to stir. The air here is warmer, carrying the unmistakable comforting scent of yeast and toasted grain. It is a smell that cuts through the metallic ozone of the high altitude, grounding him in the simple needs of life. He walks down Oven Row, a street lined with low brick buildings. The chimneys are already smoking, sending plumes of white smoke to join the clouds below. He stops at the window of the gilded loaf. The glass is fogged with condensation from the heat inside. Silas wipes a small circle clear. Rub, squeak. He looks in. He sees the night baker, a burly man covered in flour, working the dough on a massive wooden table. The baker is moving with a rhythmic, hypnotic motion. Push, fold, turn, push, fold, turn. He is shaping the cloud loaves, airy breads made with high-altitude yeast that rise to 3 times the size of ground bread. Silas taps on the glass. Tap, tap. The baker looks up and nods, raising a floury hand in greeting. Silas nods back. He continues his patrol. He checks the ash pits behind the bakeries, ensuring the hot coals raked from the ovens are safely contained in iron bins and not smouldering near the timber frames. He lifts the lid of a bin with his staff. Clang, heat. A wave of warmth hits his face. The coals are glowing deep red, slowly turning to grey ash. They are safe. He closes the lid. Thud. The baker's ward is a cozy, warm pocket in the freezing night, a promise that when the city wakes, there will be hot bread to break the fast. From the warmth of the bakeries, Silas moves to the Cloud-Wharf, located on the northern windward edge of the city. This is a rougher, more industrial area. Here, the city harvests its water, Giant nets of fine silken mesh are strung out into the void, catching the passing clouds and condensing the moisture into droplets that run down into collection troughs. Silas walks along the gantry that overlooks the nets. The wind is stiffer here, whistling through the mesh with a sound like 1,000 harps. Hum. Shh. Hum. The nets are currently white with rime ice, the frozen fog of the upper atmosphere. Silas checks the tension cables that hold the nets. The weight of the ice can be immense. He places his hand on a steel cable. It is vibrating with the strain, singing a high-pitched note. Ping, ving. It is tight, but with intolerances. He watches the de-icing mech, a small clockwork spider that crawls along the nets, tapping the ice loose with tiny hammers. Tap, tap, crack. The ice falls away in sheets, tumbling down into the melting vats below. Crash, slush. Silas inspects the vats. The heating coils are glowing dull orange, melting the ice into pure, potable water. He checks the flow meter. Gallons collected, 4,000. It is a good harvest tonight. The city will have water for tea, for washing, and for the steam engines. He watches the fog swirl through the nets, a silent grey river that is constantly being caught and transformed. This is the alchemy of survival in the sky, turning the empty air into the substance of life. He pulls his collar up tighter against the damp wind and turns back towards the center of the city. Leaving the damp chill of the Cloud-Wharf, Silas turns inland towards the Crystal Foundry, a low domed building that glows with a faint internal violet light. This is where the city grows its power sources. Aethelgard relies on ether crystals to store the static electricity harvested from the high-altitude storms. Silas pushes open the heavy lead-lined door. Heave, thud. The air inside is warm and dry, smelling faintly of ozone and crushed quartz. He walks down the central aisle, flanked on either side by rows of tall glass vats. Inside the vats, submerged in a nutrient-rich mineral solution, the crystals are growing. They look like jagged spears of purple glass, slowly accumulating mass in the silence. Silas stops at Vat 7. The liquid inside is bubbling gently, bloop, bloop, as the crystal absorbs the electrical charge fed into it by copper cables. He checks the growth monitor, a strip of paper on a rotating drum. The line is steady, rising at a perfect 45-degree angle. The crystal is healthy. He moves to the cooling racks at the back of the room. Here, finished crystals sit in beds of sand to stabilize. As they cool, they emit a high, resonant pinging sound, like a finger running around the rim of a wine glass. Ping, sing, ping. It is the music of the foundry. Silas inspects a tray of shard lights, small crystals used for handheld lanterns. He picks one up with a pair of wooden tongs. It pulses with a soft, steady rhythm. Pulse, pulse. He nods. It is stable. He places it back in the sand. Crunch. The foundry is a garden of stone and light, growing the energy that will warm the city tomorrow night. He checks the ventilation shafts to ensure the ozone levels remain safe, then turns to leave, his shadow stretching long and purple against the wall. Silas exits the foundry and approaches one of the most vertigo-inducing sections of his patrol, the Walk of the Void. This is a maintenance gantry made of open iron grating that runs beneath the main thoroughfare of the city, allowing access to the underside of the floating island. He unlocks the access gate. Clank, squeak, he steps onto the grate. Clang. Through the holes in the metal beneath his boots, there is nothing but 3,000 feet of empty air and the drifting white tops of the cloud layer below. He grips the handrail tightly. Even after 20 years, the first step always quickens the heart. He is walking among the keel stones, the massive upside-down spires of levitation rock that keep the city buoyant. These stones hum with a deep bass vibration that he can feel in his teeth. Thrum. He shines his lantern on the binding hoops, giant bands of iron that hold the keel stones in place. He is looking for stress fractures or loose rivets caused by the constant vibration. He walks slowly, inspecting every foot of the metal. The wind here is different. It is an updraft, pushing against him from below, making his greatcoat billow upwards. He spots a loose bolt on a flange plate. He takes a heavy wrench from his belt. He fits it over the nut. Clink. He heaves his weight against it. Grunt. Scree. The nut turns a quarter inch, locking tight. Clunk. The vibration in that section stops. He continues along the gantry. Far below, a gap in the clouds reveals a tiny, twinkling cluster of lights on the ground. A village, sleeping unaware that a city is floating directly above their heads. Silas feels a strange kinship with those distant lights. They are both islands of humanity in the dark, separated by a sea of air. Climbing back up from the understructure, Silas finds himself in the Cartographer's Guild, located in the quietest corner of the Scholars' Quarter. He enters the Hall of Charts. This room is vast and circular, dominated by the autoscribe, a massive magical mechanism suspended from the ceiling. The room smells of iron gall ink, old parchment, and beeswax polish. In the center of the room lies the master map, a circular table 20 feet wide representing the sky. Above it, mechanical arms holding quill pens move silently, driven by inputs from the weather vanes and the astrolabe. Silas watches the pens work. Scratch, dip, scratch. They are drawing the shifting wind rivers, the invisible currents of air that flow through the atmosphere like water. Tonight, the pens are sketching a new high-pressure ridge forming to the west. Silas walks around the perimeter of the table, checking the inkwells. They are large glass reservoirs filled with black, blue, and red inks. The blue inkwell is running low. He retrieves a jug from the supply cabinet. Glug, glug, glug. He refills the well without spilling a drop. The surface of the ink is like a dark mirror. He checks the paper feed, a roll of fresh vellum that unspools slowly onto the table. It is feeding smoothly. The map is the city's eyes. Without it, they would be blind drifters in the white fog. He looks at the section marked Current Position. A small gemstone marker sits on the map, representing Aethelgard. They are currently drifting over the Forest of Whispers. He nods. The navigation is precise. The silence of the room is only broken by the scratching of the quills, the sound of history being written in real time. Leaving the Cartographer's Guild, Silas heads towards the sky cisterns. These are colossal vaulted chambers built into the bedrock of the city, designed to store the water harvested by the cloudfishers. He enters through a heavy bronze door. Boom. The sound echoes for seconds in the vast, hollow space. The air here is cool and damp, smelling of wet stone and standing water. He is standing on a narrow stone walkway that bridges the center of the main reservoir. Below him lies a black lake of pure, filtered cloud water. It is perfectly still, reflecting the vaulted ceiling like a dark mirror. Silas drops a small pebble into the water to test the surface tension. Plip. Ripples spread out in perfect concentric circles, disturbing the reflection. Ripple, ripple, ripple. He checks the level markers carved into the stone pillars. The water is high, reaching the mark of the spring flood. This is good. He walks to the far end of the chamber to inspect the distribution valves. These are great wheels of iron that control the flow of water to the districts. He places his ear against the main pipe. He listens for the sound of rushing water. Whoosh! Gurgle. The pressure is constant. He checks the seals for leaks. A small drip is falling from a packing nut. Drip, drip. He tightens it with his hand. Twist. The dripping stops. The acoustics of the cistern are strange. His footsteps sound like giant stomps, and his breathing sounds like a gale. It is a lonely, majestic place, a cathedral of water hidden beneath the streets. He shines his lantern into the corners, ensuring no moss is growing on the filtration screens. The water is clear, the city's thirst will be quenched. Silas emerges from the depths of the cisterns and finds himself at the edge of the Bazaar of the Four Winds. By day, this is the loudest, most chaotic place in Aethelgard, filled with merchants shouting, silk snapping in the wind, and the smell of roasting meats. By night, it is a ghost town of canvas and wood. The market stalls are shuttered and locked. Heavy tarpaulins are lashed down over the goods to protect them from the dew. Flap, rustle. Silas walks down the main aisle. He is the only customer in this silent shop. He passes a stall selling carpets from the lowlands. He runs his hand over a stack of rugs. The wool is coarse and damp. He checks the ropes holding the stall's awning. He reties a loose knot. Pull, loop. He passes the spice merchant's stall. The air still holds a faint, lingering ghost of curry and cinnamon, a memory of the day's trade. He sees a movement in the shadows. It is a ship cat, a lean ginger feline that hunts the rats attracted to the grain sacks. The cat pauses, one paw raised, and looks at Silas. Silas blinks slowly. The cat blinks back, then melts into the darkness between the crates. Patter, silence. Silas checks the public scales in the center of the square. The brass pans are empty, balancing perfectly in the still air. He checks the notice board where the daily prices are posted. Cloud wheat, 2 silver. Lift wood, 10 gold. The economy sleeps. The haggling is done. The coins are counted and locked away. There is a profound melancholy in an empty market, a sense of waiting that hangs heavy in the air. Silas walks through the gate of merchants and leaves the bazaar behind, his footsteps echoing on the deserted cobblestones. Leaving the silent market behind, Silas enters Cloud-Keep Row, the oldest residential street in Aethelgard. The houses here are tall and narrow, built of dark, seasoned timber that has withstood a century of high-altitude winds. The cobblestones are replaced by smooth wooden planks to dampen the sound of boots. Silas walks with exaggerated care. Step, silence, step. He is the guardian of the sleep of 3,000 souls. He passes a house with a blue door. A child's wooden horse has been left on the stoop, forgotten in the play of the evening. Silas picks it up. Lift, smooth. He brushes the frost from its mane. He places it on the windowsill, under the shelter of the eaves, safe from the damp. Place, pat. He checks the street lamps. These are not the bright arc lights of the main avenues, but glow globes filled with a soft amber phosphorescence. One globe is flickering slightly. Silas taps the glass housing with his knuckle. Tap, tap. The connection stabilizes, and the light burns steady and true. Hum. He walks on. He can hear the faint sounds of life from within the houses, the rhythmic creak of a cradle being rocked, the low murmur of a dream, the settling of a timber frame. These are the sounds of safety. The city is a hive, and the bees are resting. Silas pauses at the corner to check the fire watch barrel. It is full of sand. He smooths the surface with his glove. Brush, flat. Fire is the greatest fear in a city of wood and wind. He nods. The street is safe. He moves on, a silent shadow passing over the sleeping faces of his neighbors. At the southern tip of the floating island stands the lighthouse of the ether. It is a squat, sturdy tower built of white granite, designed to guide the airships through the treacherous cloud banks. Silas unlocks the heavy iron door at the base. Clank, creak. He climbs the spiral stair, the air growing warmer as he ascends. He reaches the lantern room. In the center sits the great lens, a masterpiece of optical engineering ground from a single massive diamond. It rotates silently on a bath of mercury. Spin, shh, spin. The light source is not fire, but a concentrated beam of starfire channeled from the collector on the roof. It is blindingly bright, yet cool. Silas puts on a pair of smoked glass goggles to protect his eyes. He checks the rotation mechanism. The gears are brass, meshing with a perfect silent kiss. Tick, turn. He checks the fog penetrator setting. The beam is currently set to high intensity, cutting a solid cone of white light through the dark for 20 miles. He walks out onto the gallery that encircles the light. The beam sweeps over his head like a physical weight. Whoosh! Flash! He looks out into the void. Far in the distance he sees the answering flash of another lighthouse on a neighboring island. Flash. Wait. Flash. It is a silent conversation between the guardians of the sky. I am here. You are safe. Silas checks the lens for soot or condensation. It is pristine. The lightkeeper, an old man named Elias, is asleep in his chair in the corner, a book open on his lap. Silas does not wake him. The machine is doing its work. The light turns, the beam sweeps, and the ships are guided home. Descending from the lighthouse, Silas heads to the iron ward, the industrial sector where the massive storm anchors are housed. These are the emergency brakes of the city, giant grapnels of solid iron that can be dropped on long chains to snag the sky reefs below in case of a hurricane. The scale here is immense. The chains are the size of tree trunks, each link weighing as much as a man. Silas walks along the inspection gantry. The air smells of rust and grease. He takes a heavy hammer from the rack. Lift. Wait. He strikes the first link of the main chain. Clang. The sound is a deep, resonant bell tone that vibrates in his chest. Hum. Throb. A clear tone means the iron is sound. A dull thud would indicate a crack. He moves to the next link. Clang. And the next. Clang. He is ringing the bells of the city's foundation. He checks the windlass mechanism, a drum of cable the size of a house. The brake pads are thick blocks of oak, clamped tight against the drum. He checks the tension on the locking pins. They are seated deep. Push. Solid. He inspects the grease troughs that keep the chain lubricated. The grease is thick and black, smelling of tar. He dips a stick into it to check the viscosity. Dip, drip. It is good. The cold has not frozen it. These anchors have not been used in 50 years, but they must be ready at a moment's notice. Silas finishes his inspection, the ringing of the iron fading into the background hum of the city. He hangs up the hammer. Clatter. The city is tethered, secure against the wrath of the wind. Halfway through his shift, Silas reaches the watchman's shelter on the eastern promenade. It is a small, hexagonal hut built of cedar with windows on all sides. He opens the door and steps inside. Creak. Shut. The wind noise cuts out instantly. The silence is sudden and deep. He lights a small spirit stove in the corner. Click. Whoosh. A blue flame springs to life. He places a copper kettle on the burner. While the water heats, he sits in the worn leather armchair that faces the window. He takes off his heavy gloves, flexing his stiff fingers. Stretch. Crack. He rubs his hands together to warm them. Rub. Rub. The kettle begins to sing. Whee! Whistle. He pours the boiling water into a ceramic mug, adding a pinch of dried sky tea leaves. The steam rises, smelling of mint and sage. Blow. Sip. The hot liquid spreads warmth through his chest. He leans back, looking out at the stars through the glass. This is his moment of stillness within the motion. He is suspended between the earth and the moon, drinking tea in a wooden box. He watches a shooting star scratch a line of fire across the black sky. Zip, fade. He makes a wish, a small habit from childhood. He wishes for a quiet dawn. He finishes his tea, feeling the energy return to his limbs. He rinses the mug and places it back on the shelf. Clink. He puts his gloves back on. Pull. Snap. He stands up, ready to face the cold once more. He extinguishes the stove. Puff! He opens the door and steps back out into the night. As Silas resumes his patrol along the cloud edge, a low, mournful sound vibrates through the soles of his boots. Moo. An. It is not the wind, and it is not the machinery. It is a biological sound, deep and ancient. Silas stops and leans over the railing. Below him, emerging from a dense bank of cumulus clouds, is a cloud whale. It is a creature of immense size, easily twice the length of the city's largest airship. Its skin is a mottled grey-blue, resembling the twilight sky itself. It swims through the air with slow, majestic undulations of its vast tail flukes. Sweep, push, sweep. Barnacles of floating pumice stone cling to its flanks, glowing with faint bioluminescence. Silas watches in awe. These creatures are rare, migratory titans of the upper atmosphere. The whale opens its mouth, filtering the ether plankton from the air with baleen plates that shimmer like gold. It emits another call, a sound that vibrates the very bones of the city. Hum, om. Silas feels the railing shake under his hands. He shines his lantern down not to disturb it, but to greet it. The whale rolls slightly, revealing a massive eye the size of a carriage wheel. It looks at the city, then dives back into the clouds with a slow, powerful thrust of its tail. Splash. Vapor. The clouds swirl in its wake. Silas stands there for a long time, watching the ripples in the mist, feeling incredibly small and incredibly privileged. He makes a note in his logbook. 0400 hours. Sighting, Leviathan. Course, southbound. He closes the book. The night has given him a gift. Silas turns away from the edge of the world and the memory of the great whale, directing his steps toward the rhythmic heart of Aethelgard, the district of the sails. Here, on the windward rise of the city, stand the great windmills that grind the grain and pump the bellows of the forges. These are not the stone towers of the ground, but skeletal structures of iron lattice, supporting vast fans of white canvas that catch the high-altitude breeze. Silas walks down the avenue of blades. Step, step, whoosh, step. The sound here is hypnotic. It is a steady, low-frequency pulse as the giant blades slice through the air. Swish, creak, swish, creak. He stops at mill number 4, a tower known as the Old Duchess. He looks up. The sails are reefed to half canvas for the night, spinning with a lazy, majestic slowness. He checks the brake lever at the base of the tower. It is a heavy iron bar wrapped in leather, locked in the disengaged position to allow free rotation. He tests the tension on the locking pin. Jiggle, clank. It is secure. If a storm were to rise, he would need to throw this lever to stop the blades, a task requiring the strength of 2 men. Tonight, however, the Duchess spins freely. He walks around to the gear housing, a wooden shed at the base where the vertical rotation is converted to horizontal power. He opens the inspection hatch. Scree, thud. Inside, the massive wooden cogs, teeth lubricated with tallow, mesh together with a deep, satisfying rumble. Grumble, clunk, grumble. The smell of the grease is thick and animal. Silas shines his lantern on the governor, a spinning brass device that regulates the speed. The brass balls fly outward, held in check by springs. They are spinning steadily. The mill is happy. He closes the hatch. Bang! He pats the iron strut of the tower. These machines are the lungs of the city's industry, breathing in the wind and exhaling power, and tonight they breathe easy. Leaving the rhythmic swoosh of the windmills, Silas approaches a marvel of Aethelgardian engineering, the Crystal Span. This is a pedestrian bridge connecting the windmill district to the celestial observatories on the Moon Isle, a small satellite rock tethered to the main city. The bridge is constructed entirely of glassite, a magically reinforced glass that is as strong as steel but perfectly transparent. Silas steps onto the bridge. Tap, squeak. The sensation is one of walking on nothing. Beneath the soles of his boots, he sees the swirling grey mist of the clouds, and through the gaps the distant twinkling constellations of the ground cities far below. It induces a primal vertigo that never truly fades, no matter how many times he crosses it. He grips the waist-high glass railing. Grip, slide. His hand leaves a momentary print of warmth on the freezing surface before fading. He walks to the center of the span. Here, suspended in the void, the silence is absolute. There is no wind noise, as the bridge is enclosed in a tube of the same glass to protect scholars from the gale. He is walking inside a clear tunnel through the sky. He checks the sealant strips between the glass panels. They are made of white rubber, flexible against the cold. He presses his thumb against a seal. Press. Spring. It is soft and pliable. If it were hard, it would crack. He shines his lantern on the floor panels, looking for star cracks, tiny stress fractures that look like snowflakes. The glass is pristine, polished to invisibility by the wind on the outside and the cleaners on the inside. He looks up. The stars are visible through the roof, the walls, and the floor. He is floating in space. For a moment, he is not a watchman, he is an astronaut, a traveler in the great deep. He takes a breath, his fogging breath the only thing obscuring the view, and continues his walk across the invisible path. Silas steps off the crystal span and onto the solid basalt of the Moon Isle. This islet is dedicated entirely to the Academy of the Stars, a university for astronomers and navigators. The buildings here are domed observatories, their shutters thrown open to the night sky. He walks into the courtyard of the spheres. In the center stands a massive orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system made of bronze and gemstones. It is 30 feet wide and moves in real time. Silas approaches the model of the sun, a sphere of polished gold in the center. He checks the clockwork base beneath it. The gears are clicking softly, a sound like 1,000 tiny crickets. Tick, 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 tick. He walks to the planet representing the world. A globe of lapis lazuli. A tiny moon of pearl orbits it on a silver wire. Silas checks the orbital track. It must be kept free of dust and ice. He takes a soft camel hair brush from his belt pouch. He gently sweeps the silver track. Swish, swish. A few grains of frost fall away. The pearl moon glides forward smoothly. Glide, silent. He looks up at the real moon, high and bright in the sky, and then back at the pearl. The synchronization is perfect. He walks toward the main library building, the Hall of Ephemera. The windows are dark, but the smell of old paper and binding glue seeps out from the ventilation grates. Sniff. Dry. It is the scent of recorded time. He checks the heavy bronze doors. They are locked with a complex celestial combination lock. He shines his lantern on the tumblers. They are set to the correct alignment for the date. Align? Check. The knowledge is safe. The students are asleep in their dormitories, dreaming of orbits and comets, while Silas guards the mechanical universe that teaches them their trade. Returning across the crystal span to the main city, Silas descends a flight of stone stairs into the apothecary's quarter. This district is sunken below the street level to protect the medicinal gardens from the harshest winds. As he descends, the temperature rises slightly, and the air becomes thick with complex herbal aromas. Step, sniff, step. Inhale. He smells the sharp tang of eucalyptus, the sweet cloying scent of night-blooming jasmine, and the earthy smell of damp peat. He enters the greenhouse of shadows. This structure is built of dark green glass and houses the plants that thrive only in the moonlight. He opens the door. Creak, hush. Inside, the air is humid and still. Rows of lunar orchids hang from the ceiling, their pale petals glowing with a faint ghostly luminescence. Silas walks down the central path, his boots crunching softly on crushed bark. Crunch, crunch. He checks the misting system, a network of copper pipes that sprays a fine fog over the ferns. He turns a small brass valve. Squeak, hiss. A cloud of mist erupts, coating the leaves in dew. Hiss. Settle. The plants seem to sigh with relief. He inspects a bed of sleep poppies, used by the healers to make sedatives. The pods are large and heavy, nodding on their stems. He counts them roughly. They are all accounted for. He checks the temperature gauge on the wall. It reads 60 degrees, perfect for the ghost fungi growing in the corner. He taps the glass of the gauge. Tap, steady. This garden is the pharmacy of the city, the source of all healing. It is a quiet, living laboratory where life is coaxed from the soil despite the altitude. Silas takes a deep breath of the medicinal air, clearing his lungs of the thin atmosphere outside, before stepping back out into the cold. Silas climbs back up to the street level and enters the plaza of the Bell. In the center of this square stands a solitary wooden post, atop which hangs the watchman's bell. It is a small silver bell, much smaller than the great bells of the tower, used for signaling the change of the internal guard. It is not rung loudly, it is chimed. Silas approaches the post. He checks his pocket watch. It is exactly the midpoint of the night. The hands form a perfect vertical line. Click, open. He snaps the watch cover shut. He takes a small padded striker hanging from the post. He strikes the bell once. Ting. The sound is pure, high, and incredibly clear. It cuts through the silence like a knife, rippling out across the sleeping rooftops. Ting, ing, ing. It is not an alarm. It is a reassurance. It tells the other watchmen in distant sectors that the Western District is secure. He waits. 5 seconds later, from the distant northern sector, a faint answer comes, ting. And then, from the east, ting. The network is active. The watchers are awake. Silas hangs the striker back on its hook. Click. He leans against the post for a moment, resting his legs. A stray cloud cat, a fluffy grey feline with oversized paws for walking on snow, trots out from an alleyway. It stops and looks at him. Silas reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small piece of dried fish he keeps for this exact purpose. He tosses it. Toss, flop. The cat pounces, devours the treat in one bite, and rubs its head against Silas's boot in thanks. Purr, rub, purr. Silas smiles. It is the only contact he has had with a living soul for 4 hours. Go on then, he whispers. The cat vanishes into the shadows. Silas pushes himself off the post, grips his staff, and resumes his walk. The night is half over. From the central plaza, Silas heads upward, taking a narrow, winding staircase that hugs the exterior wall of the council hall. He is ascending to the Gallery of Veins, a specialized platform that sits exposed to the highest airstreams above the city. As he climbs, the wind noise increases, shifting from a low moan to a sharp, high-pitched whistle. Whoosh! Whistle, sing. He reaches the gallery. It is a forest of brass and copper instruments, a garden of spinning metal planted in the stone roof. There are hundreds of anemometers, their cup-shaped catchers spinning wildly in the dark. Whir, spin, whir. There are windsocks made of chainmail mesh, stiffly pointing towards the southeast. Silas walks among them, a giant in a field of clockwork flowers. He stops at the master vane, a golden arrow 6 feet long, balanced on a jeweled pivot. It trembles slightly as it cuts the air. Silas checks the drag dampeners at the base. These are oil-filled pistons that prevent the vane from swinging too violently in a gust. He presses down on the piston arm. Push. Resistance. It moves slowly, oozing back into place. The viscosity is correct. He moves to the barometric drum, a large cylinder wrapped in a graph paper sheet. A stylus, connected to a vacuum-sealed capsule, is tracing a line on the paper. Silas shines his lantern on the line. It is dipping slightly, a drop in pressure. Scratch, dip. This confirms the cartographer's prediction of a coming weather front. He taps the glass case to settle the mechanism. Tap, tap. He listens to the collective sound of the gallery. It is a chaotic yet rhythmic symphony of clicking gears, spinning cups, and rushing air. It is the voice of the atmosphere speaking to the city, telling it how to fly. Silas pulls his collar up over his ears to dampen the noise and makes his way to the far side of the roof, seeking the shelter of the lee side. Descending from the noisy heights of the weather gallery, Silas seeks the quietude of the Avenue of Ancestors. This is a ceremonial walkway that forms the spine of the administrative district. Here, the street lights are held aloft not by poles, but by the stone hands of statues, effigies of the city's founders and past high captains. The statues are carved from white marble, standing 10 feet tall, their robes flowing in stone folds that mimic the wind. Silas walks down the center of the avenue. Step, echo, step. The silence here is heavy and respectful. He stops at the statue of Captain Harith, the man who first anchored the city to the clouds. Harith's stone face is stern, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Silas notices that a patch of star lichen, a fast-growing silvery moss, has begun to obscure the inscription on the plinth. He takes a stiff bristled brush from his belt. He does not rush. He scrubs the stone with slow, circular motions. Scrub, scritch, scrub. The dry lichen flakes away as grey dust, drift. He reveals the letters. He who bound the stone. Silas blows away the remaining dust. Puff. He checks the lantern held in the statue's hand. It is a gas flame, shielded by thick glass. He adjusts the valve at the base of the statue's foot, turning the flame down slightly to conserve fuel for the dawn. Twist, dim. The light softens to a warm orange. He moves to the next statue, a woman holding a sextant. He brushes a drift of snow from her shoulder. Sweep, fall. It is a small act of service, maintaining the dignity of the dead. In a floating city, memory is the ballast that keeps the culture from drifting away. Silas finishes the row, leaving the ancestors clean and bright, standing guard over the sleeping council chambers. At the end of the Avenue of Ancestors, Silas turns into a narrow, arched alleyway that leads to the sanctuary of the Aeromonks. This is a walled compound on the eastern edge of the island, a place of silence and meditation. The monks believe that the air is a divine element, and they build their lives around its currents. Silas pushes open the heavy wooden gate, which swings silently on well-oiled hinges. Creak, shh. He enters the courtyard of prayer wheels. Here, hundreds of brass cylinders are mounted on vertical spindles. They are not turned by hand, but by the wind. Tonight, the breeze is steady, and the wheels are all spinning. Whir, hum, whir. The sound is a continuous, multi-layered drone, like a choir of hummingbirds. Silas walks slowly through the rows. He is checking the axle bearings. If a wheel squeaks, it disrupts the monk's meditation. He listens intently. He hears a faint squeak, squeak, squeak coming from a small wheel near the wall. He locates it. He takes a small oil can from his pocket. He applies a single drop of oil to the top of the spindle. Drip. The oil seeps in. The squeak vanishes, replaced by the smooth whir of the spin. He nods. He checks the wind chants, long strips of silk painted with prayers, fluttering from tall poles. They snap crisply in the breeze. Snap, flutter. He ensures the knots are secure. In the center of the courtyard, a single monk is sitting in the lotus position. Wrapped in heavy saffron robes, meditating in the freezing cold. He does not move. He does not acknowledge Silas. He is one with the wind. Silas bows deeply to the monk's back, a gesture of respect from one night walker to another, and quietly backs out of the gate, leaving the prayer wheels to spin their silent petitions to the sky. Silas leaves the spiritual calm of the monastery and heads towards the district of the glaziers. This is the quarter where the city's windows, lenses, and greenhouse panels are created. As he approaches, the air grows significantly warmer. The great kilns run 24 hours a day, keeping the district in a perpetual tropical heat. Silas unbuttons his greatcoat. He enters the hall of the glass blowers. The workshop is cavernous, lit by the roaring orange maws of the furnaces. Roar, crackle. The night shift is working. Silas watches a team of 3 artisans. One gathers a glob of molten glass on the end of a long iron blowpipe. It glows like a miniature sun, viscous and dripping. Gather, spin. He brings it to the marva, a steel table, and rolls it to shape the skin. Roll, hiss. The glass cools slightly, turning from white hot to cherry red. He blows into the pipe. Puff, expand. The glass swells into a bubble. Silas walks along the gallery, checking the fire suppression systems. In a room full of liquid fire, safety is paramount. He checks the overhead cisterns. They are full of water, ready to be released by pulling a chain. He checks the chains. They are hanging freely, unobstructed. He moves to the annealing ovens, long tunnels where the finished glass slowly cools to prevent shattering. A conveyor belt made of metal mesh carries rows of new bottles and lenses into the darkness of the oven. Clink, rattle, clink. The rhythm is steady. He checks the temperature gauges on the side of the oven. 900 degrees. Steady. He nods to the foreman, a woman with protective smoked spectacles, who is inspecting a sheet of window glass for flaws. She gives him a thumbs up. The fires are contained. The craft continues. Silas steps back out into the street, the sweat on his brow instantly freezing in the shock of the cold air. To reacclimate to the cold, Silas heads for the steam bath pavilion, a public facility located near the thermal vents of the city's core. This is where the citizens come to wash and socialize, but at this hour, it is empty of people. It is the time for the water keepers. Silas enters through the service door. The air is thick with steam, smelling of sulfur and lavender soap. He walks onto the tiled deck of the main pool. The water is a deep, inviting turquoise, illuminated by underwater glow crystals. Ripple, lap, splash. The surface is broken only by the gentle bubbling of the thermal jets. Silas approaches the control manifold, a wall of brass wheels and pressure gauges. He is here to assist in the morning flush, a process where the water is cycled through the filters before the dawn bathers arrive. He grips the large wheel marked main drain. Grip, strain. He turns it 2 full rotations to the left. Creak, clank. Beneath the floor, a massive valve opens. He hears the deep sucking sound of thousands of gallons of water beginning to move. Gurgle, whoosh. He watches the water level in the pool drop by an inch, skimming off the surface debris into the overflow channels. He waits for 5 minutes, watching the sand timer on the wall. Sand, flow. When the sand runs out, he turns the wheel back. Twist, lock. The drain closes. He opens the inlet valve. Scree. Fresh, superheated water from the core rushes in to replace what was lost. Splash, churn. The pool temperature rises. He dips his hand into the water. It is hot, almost scalding. By sunrise, it will be perfect. He checks the stack of clean towels by the door. They are folded in neat, white towers. Everything is ready. He leaves the humid sanctuary, his uniform damp with condensation, and steps back into the crisp, dry night. Leaving the humid warmth of the steam baths, Silas makes his way towards the Museum of Terror, a somber building of grey granite that houses the city's collection of artifacts from the surface world below. The museum is closed to the public at this hour, and the interior is a cavern of shadows and silence. Silas unlocks the heavy oak doors with a skeleton key. Click, clack, creak. He steps inside. The air here is dry and cool, smelling of old dust, preservation wax, and the faint metallic scent of rust. He walks through the Hall of the Ancients. His lantern beam sweeps over glass cases filled with strange foreign objects, a rusted iron sword from a ground war fought 3 centuries ago, a wheel of petrified wood from a carriage, and a collection of colourful river stones. These are treasures to the skyborn, who know only wind and cloud. Silas approaches the great cabinet, a display case containing a suit of plate armor from a terrestrial knight. He checks the humidity gauge inside the case. The needle is steady at 40%. He takes a soft cloth from his pocket and wipes a smudge from the glass. Rub, squeak. He moves to the section dedicated to flora of the lowlands. Here, dried leaves of oak and maple are pressed between sheets of glass. He checks the seals on the frames. They must be airtight to prevent decay. Press, check. He stops before a large, rough stone mounted on a plinth. It is a piece of bedrock from the mountain peak where the city was first carved before it rose. He places his hand on the stone. It is cold and rough, a tangible connection to the earth they left behind. Touch. Solid. The silence in the museum is different from the silence outside. It is a heavy, historical silence, the weight of centuries pressing down on the glass. Silas nods to the silent exhibits, the guardians of memory, and turns to leave, locking the door on the past. Silas exits the museum and ascends a series of wooden ramps to the high-altitude apiary. This structure is a series of hexagonal hives built into the sheltered southern wall of the Weaver's Tower. The bees here are cloud bees, a hardy species with fuzzy white thoraxes that forage on the high-altitude flora. As Silas approaches, he hears the low, collective hum of the colony. Hum. Zzz. It is a sound of warmth and industry. He opens the inspection panel of the main hive. Slide, tap. Inside, through a glass viewing pane, he sees the bees clustering for warmth. They are moving slowly, a living carpet of gold and black. Silas checks the sugar reservoirs at the bottom of the hive. These are small troughs filled with syrup to sustain the bees through the winter nights. The level is low. He takes a flask of syrup from the supply shed. Uncork, pour. The thick, amber liquid flows into the trough. Glug, glug. The scent of honey and sugar fills the cold air, sweet and cloying. He watches a few worker bees descend to drink. Sip, buzz. He checks the ventilation slats at the top of the hive. They must be open enough to let moisture escape, but closed enough to keep the heat in. He adjusts a slat by a fraction of an inch. Slide, click. The hum of the hive seems to deepen in approval. These bees produce the wax for the city's seals and the honey for the baker's bread. They are vital workers. Silas closes the panel gently. Thud. He wipes a sticky drop of syrup from his glove. He listens to the hum for a moment longer, a sound of life enduring against the cold, before moving on to the next station. From the sweet air of the apiary, Silas moves to the acrid atmosphere of the alchemist's quarter. This district is recognizable by the colorful smoke rising from its many chimneys. Green, violet, and yellow plumes that dissipate quickly in the wind. Silas enters the ventilation control room of the main laboratory. He is not here to mix potions, but to ensure the safety of those who do. The room is filled with the sound of rushing air. Whoosh, hiss. Massive bellows, driven by a clockwork engine, are pumping fresh air into the labs below and sucking the fumes out. Silas checks the scrubber banks. These are large filters filled with activated charcoal and treated wool. He pulls a lever to bypass the number 3 filter. Clank, hiss. He opens the inspection hatch. The wool is stained a deep, toxic purple. It is saturated. He makes a note in his logbook. Filter 3, saturation critical. Replace at dawn. He engages the backup filter. Slam, lock. The airflow returns to normal. He walks to the fume hood monitors. A series of glass tubes bubble with colored water, indicating the pressure in the extraction system. One tube is bubbling too vigorously. Bubble, bubble, splash. Silas turns a brass valve to reduce the intake. Squeak, hiss. The bubbling slows to a steady rhythm. The air in the control room smells faintly of sulfur and ozone, a sharp reminder of the volatile magic brewing beneath the floor. Silas checks the emergency neutralizer, a tank of alkaline solution suspended over the main duct. The release chain is secure. He nods. The city is safe from its own experiments. He wipes the chemical dust from the gauges and steps back out into the clean, cold night. Silas leaves the industrial sectors and heads for the vertical pastures. These are terraced gardens carved into the side of the floating rock, where the city's livestock are kept. He descends a steep, winding stair to the goat tier. Here, the sky goats, shaggy creatures with spiraled horns and sure feet, are sleeping in their pens. The air smells of dry hay, animal musk, and warm wool. Silas walks along the fence line. He checks the gate latches. Rattle, clank. They are locked tight. A goat wakes up and bleats softly. Ma. Silas reaches into his pocket and pulls out a handful of dried oats. He offers it to the animal. The goat's velvet lips brush his palm as it eats. Munch, crunch. Silas strokes its coarse, warm coat. Pat, rub. He checks the water troughs. The water has a thin crust of ice on it. He breaks the ice with the butt of his staff. Crack, splash. The goats can now drink. He walks to the edge of the terrace. The fence here is the only thing between the goats and the abyss. He tests the posts. Shake, firm. They are driven deep into the rock. He looks down at the sleeping herd. These animals provide the milk for the cheese and the wool for the watchman's coat. They are the humble foundation of the city's comfort. He checks the hay racks. They are still half full. The animals are content. He listens to their breathing, a soft rhythmic puffing in the cold air. It is a peaceful pastoral scene suspended 3,000 feet in the air. Silas leaves the goats to their rest and begins the climb back up to the main level. Silas reaches the eastern battery, a fortified platform facing the rising sun. Here, a row of ceremonial bronze cannons points out into the void. These are not weapons of war, but signal guns used to mark the start of the day and to warn of approaching storms. Silas approaches the master gun. It is a beautiful piece of artillery, the barrel polished to a mirror shine, engraved with sunburst motifs. He checks the powder kegs, stored in the dry box behind the gun. He opens the lid. Creak. The powder is black and dry, smelling of charcoal and sulfur. He runs his hand through the grains. Sift, rustle. No moisture has clumped it. He closes the box. Thud. He checks the touch hole of the cannon. He uses a small wire pick to ensure it is clear of debris. Scrape, clear. He inspects the wadding, stacks of felt discs used to pack the charge. They are dry. He looks at the horizon. The sky to the east is no longer pitch black. It has turned a deep, bruised purple, the first hint that the night is ending. This is the coldest hour, the time when the temperature drops to its lowest point before the sun returns. Silas shivers slightly and pulls his coat tighter. Shiver, wrap. He checks the fuse box. The slow match cord is coiled neatly. Everything is ready for the dawn gunner, who will arrive in an hour. Silas stands by the cannon, watching the purple line on the horizon slowly broaden. He is the first to see the day coming. He is the herald of the light. He turns away from the edge, his breath pluming in white clouds before him, and heads back towards the center of the city to complete the final leg of his patrol. Leaving the eastern battery and the silent cannons, Silas descends a flight of mossy stone steps into the orbital gardens. These are unlike the enclosed winter gardens of the central city. They are open to the sky, terraced into the cliff face, and filled with the hardy, frost-resistant flora of the high altitude. The air here is thin and crisp, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. Silas walks along the gravel path, his boots crunching softly. Crunch, step, crunch. He approaches a bed of dawn lilies. These are large, trumpet-shaped flowers that remain tightly closed against the night cold but will unfurl with the first touch of the sun. He checks the frost cloches, glass bells placed over the most delicate blooms. He lifts one slightly to check the condensation. Lift, clink. The air inside is humid and warm. The flower is safe. He lowers the glass. Settles. He inspects the root heaters, copper pipes running through the soil that carry waste steam from the laundry district. He touches the earth. Press, warm. It is pleasantly tepid, keeping the roots from freezing. He moves to the windscreen, a lattice of woven willow branches that protects the garden from the prevailing easterly gale. He shakes the screen gently. Rattle, rustle. It is firm. A few dead leaves from a sky oak are caught in the weave. Silas picks them out one by one. Pluck, drop. He tosses them into the compost bin. He checks the water catchers, stone basins carved to collect the morning dew. They are brimming with clear, cold liquid. He dips his finger in. Dip, chill. It is fresh. A small cloud frog, a translucent amphibian no larger than his thumb, sits on the rim of the basin, its throat pulsing. Ribbit, peep. Silas smiles. Life thrives here on the edge of the void. He brushes a patch of rime ice from a stone bench, preparing it for the early risers who will come to watch the sunrise. Brush, clean. The garden is ready to wake up. From the gardens, Silas makes his way to the Plaza of the Flowing Time. In the center of this square stands the Great Clepsydra, a massive water clock that has kept the city's time for 3 centuries. It is a complex sculpture of bronze bowls, siphons, and floats. Silas approaches the upper reservoir. It is filled by a constant stream from the aqueduct. Splash, gurgle. He checks the flow regulator, a precise nozzle made of ruby to prevent erosion. The water jet is perfectly laminar, smooth and glass-like. He watches it fill the hour bowl. As the water level rises, a copper float lifts a pointer on the main dial. Rise, tick. Silas checks the overflow channel. If the reservoir gets too full, the water must drain away safely. He clears a small twig that has fallen into the grate. Scrape, toss. The water flows freely. Swish. He checks the siphon tube for the hour change. When the bowl is full, the siphon will trigger, emptying the water in a sudden rush to mark the hour. It is almost time. He waits. The water creeps up the side of the tube. Creep, rise. Suddenly the siphon engages. Whoosh, glug. The water rushes down into the lower basin with a satisfying roar, and the heavy bronze gear of the clock face clicks forward 1 notch. Click, plonk. The hour is struck. Silas nods. The hydraulic heart of the city is beating in perfect rhythm. He checks the slime traps at the base of the mechanism. Algae can grow in the water and clog the gears. He takes a long-handled brush and scrubs the stone channel. Scrub, swish. The green film lifts away. The water runs clear. He wipes his hands on a rag. The clock is clean, accurate, and ready to measure the coming day. Silas leaves the rhythmic splashing of the water clock and heads towards the Bridge of Morning. This is a unique structure in Aethelgard, a suspension bridge facing due east, lined with sun catchers. These are large, polished mirrors of silvered glass mounted on swiveling brass stands. Their purpose is to catch the first rays of the rising sun and reflect them down into the lower, shadowed streets of the Undercroft district, bringing light to the workers who live in the perpetual shade of the upper city. Silas walks along the bridge. The sky is now a lighter shade of violet, the stars fading fast. He approaches the first mirror. It is covered in a thin film of condensation. Fog. Dim. He takes a chamois leather cloth from his pouch. He breathes on the glass. Ha! Fog. He wipes it vigorously. Rub, squeak, rub. The silver shines, reflecting his tired face and the lightening sky. He checks the angle gear. He turns a small crank at the base of the stand. Crank, click. The mirror tilts upwards by 2 degrees to account for the season's changing sun path. Tilt, lock. He moves to the next mirror. Rub, adjust. There are 20 mirrors in total. It is a morning ritual of alignment. He is setting the stage for the light. He checks the target markers painted on the cliffs below. The mirrors must point exactly at these white circles. He sights along the rim of the third mirror. It is misaligned. He taps the frame with his palm. Thud. Shift. It settles into the correct groove. Perfect. He finishes the line. The bridge is now a battery of light, waiting for the ammunition of the sun. When the dawn breaks, this bridge will blaze with glory, beaming hope into the dark depths below. Silas puts away his cloth. Fold. Tuck. His work here is done. Silas crosses the Bridge of Morning and enters the Tower of the Scribe. This is the central repository for all official records in the city. He climbs the stone stairs to the night intake room. The room is quiet, smelling of ink and sealing wax. A lone clerk, a young man with ink-stained fingers, sits at a high desk sorting through the pneumatic capsules that have arrived from the various districts during the night. Thump. Hiss. A capsule arrives in the brass receiver. The clerk opens it. Pop. Silas approaches the desk. "A quiet night, Master Silas?" the clerk asks, his voice hushed. "Quiet enough, Joran," Silas replies. "The wind is turning west, and the ice is holding." He takes out his logbook. He places it on the desk. Thud. This is the interim report. The clerk opens a large ledger. He copies Silas's notes into the master record. Scratch, dip, scratch. Silas watches the pen move. His observations of the whale, the loose bolt, and the filter change are becoming history. "The filter in Sector 4 needs a crew," Silas adds. "I've noted it," Joran says, blotting the page with sand. Shake, blow. The sand scatters. The ink is dry. Silas retrieves his book. He checks the notice board on the wall. A new order has been posted. Expect heavy cargo dirigible at noon. Clear Dock 3. Silas nods. He will be asleep by then, but he will leave a note for the day watch. He checks the tube pressure gauge on the wall. The pneumatic system is the nervous system of the city. The needle is steady at 40 psi. Tap, steady. He listens to the hiss of air in the pipes. Messages are flying through the walls, invisible thoughts traveling at speed. He leaves the tower, his duty to the record fulfilled, and steps back out into the brightening street. As Silas steps out of the scribe's tower, the first true sensory shift of the morning hits him. The air is no longer just cold and clean. It now carries a new, warm scent. It is the smell of roasted bean root. The morning cafes are firing up their roasters. Silas walks down Brewer's Alley. The shutters of the coffee houses are being unlatched. Clack, bang. He sees a shopkeeper sweeping the front step. Swish, swish. "Morning, Watchman," the man calls out. "Morning, Thomas," Silas replies. "Smells like a dark roast today." "Aye, the Colombian shipment came in yesterday," Thomas says, leaning on his broom. Silas pauses. The city is waking up. The silence he has guarded for 8 hours is beginning to fracture, replaced by the sounds of commerce and life. He hears a door slam in the distance. Bang. He hears the rattle of a milk cart on the cobblestones. Rattle, clatter. He checks a street lamp. It is still burning, but the flame looks pale against the grey light of the dawn. He takes his snuffer pole, a long rod with a brass cone at the end. He reaches up to the lamp. He places the cone over the flame. Cover, extinguish. The light goes out. He moves to the next one. Reach, snuff. He is turning off the stars of the street. The sun is taking over. He extinguishes the entire row. The street looks grey and flat in the morning twilight, stripped of the romance of the shadows. But it also looks safe. The cobblestones are dry. The doors are secure. The night has passed without incident. Silas feels the fatigue in his legs now, a heavy, dull ache that tells him his shift is nearly done. He turns towards the watch house, walking against the flow of the waking city. The grey twilight of the pre-dawn is now lifting, revealing the true colours of the city, the pale cream of the limestone, the slate blue of the roofs, and the oxidized green of the copper domes. Silas walks towards the plaza of the Mistwalkers. Here, the city's sanitation crew is preparing for their morning sweep. These are not men with brooms, but steam automatons, squat brass constructs that roll on tank treads. They are venting excess pressure, creating a low, hissing fog around their bases. Hiss, clank, hiss. Silas watches the foreman, a human mechanic named Elara, winding the main spring of the League unit. She inserts a large iron key into the automaton's back. Crank, ratchet, crank. The spring tightens with a groan of metal. "Morning, Silas," she says, wiping grease from her cheek. "Damp night?" "Very," Silas replies. The fog was thick on the lower tiers. Elara nods. She pulls a lever on the automaton. Clunk, whir. The machine shudders to life. Its front brushes begin to spin. Swish, swish, swish. It rolls forward, scrubbing the moss from the paving stones with tireless efficiency. Silas steps aside to let the convoy pass. Rumble, squeak. They leave behind them a trail of glistening clean stone. He checks the water hydrants along the plaza edge. The automatons need to refill their tanks. He opens a valve to flush the line. Scree, splash. The water comes out clear. He closes it. Thud. The city is grooming itself, scrubbing the sleep from its eyes. Silas watches the brass parade disappear into the mist, the sound of their brushes fading into the morning hum. Silas turns down Merchant's Rise, the steep street that leads back to the city centre. The solitude of the night is officially broken. The street is filling with the early risers, the fishmongers hauling carts of sky eels, the flower sellers with their baskets of frost blooms, and the coal men with their sacks of fuel. Rumble, shout, step. The soundscape has shifted from the singular notes of the wind and the watch to a chaotic chord of humanity. Silas walks against the current. He is a rock in the stream. A cart laden with clattering milk churns passes him. Clank, clatter. The driver tips his hat. "Clear skies, watchman?" "Clear skies," Silas answers automatically. He smells the sharp tang of fresh coffee drifting from an open window. He hears the cry of a baby waking up in a second-story room. Wah! Hush! He stops at the newsstand on the corner. The paperboy is cutting the twine on a bundle of the Aethelgard Morning Chronicle. Snip, rustle. The ink is still damp. Silas glances at the headline, "Trade winds shift north. Grain prices stable." He nods. The world is turning. He checks the public clock on the facade of the bank. It is 10 minutes to 6. The day shift is already putting on their boots. Silas feels a disconnect. Their beginning is his end. He pulls his coat tighter, feeling like a ghost of the night lingering too long in the land of the living. He steps into a doorway to let a group of laughing school children run past, their breath puffing in the cold air. Giggle, stamp. They are the future, rushing toward the day. He is the past, guarding the night. Reaching the square of the Ascendants, Silas witnesses the daily launch of the courier gliders. These are small, single-person aircraft made of balsa wood and silk, launched from a catapult ramp on the roof of the post office. The pilots, dressed in leather flight suits and goggles, are checking their craft. Silas stops to watch. It is a ritual he never tires of. The first pilot climbs into the cockpit. Creak. Settle. He gives a thumbs up. The catapult operator pulls the release lever. Thwack. The glider shoots forward. Whoosh. It drops off the edge of the roof, plummeting towards the clouds. For a heart-stopping second, it falls like a stone. Then, the pilot pulls back on the stick. The silk wings catch the updraft. Snap. Soar. The glider rises, banking sharply to the left, catching the morning sun on its wings. It turns gold against the blue sky. Flash, glide. Silas tracks it as it spirals down towards the distant ground stations. He checks the launch ramp mechanism from the ground. The counterweights are resetting smoothly. Clank, ratchet. He checks the windsock on the roof. It is limp. The air is calm. Perfect flying weather. A second glider launches. Thwack, whoosh, soar. It is a silent ballet of flight. These couriers carry the urgent news, the love letters, and the bank drafts that connect the floating city to the earth. Silas salutes the departing pilot, a small gesture of respect for those who bridge the gap between the worlds. He turns back to the street, his neck stiff from looking up, and continues his march towards home. Silas arrives at the Gate of the Watch, the fortified entrance to the citadel that houses the city's protectors. The gate is open now, the iron portcullis raised. Raffle clang. Standing in the courtyard is the Day Watch, a squad of 12 men and women in crisp blue uniforms, their brass buttons shining in the dawn light. They are chatting, drinking tea, and checking their equipment. They look fresh, rested, and loud. Silas walks through them. He feels heavy, his boots dragging slightly on the stone. Scuff, step. He approaches the captain's podium. Captain Vance, the day commander, is reviewing the roster. He looks up. Silas, he says, his voice booming and cheerful. Report? Silas straightens his back, fighting the fatigue. Sector 4, loose bolt on the main flange. Filter 3 in the Alchemist's Quarter needs changing, and a whale sighting off the South Cape at 0400. Vance raises an eyebrow. A whale? Good omen. He scribbles in the day log. Scratch, scratch. The bolt is noted. Maintenance is dispatched. Silas unclips the heavy ring of keys from his belt. Jingle, heavy. He places them on the podium. Clatter. He unpins his star lantern badge. He places it next to the keys. Click. The weight is gone. He is no longer the authority. He is just a man. Rest well, Silas, Vance says, already turning to address his squad. Formation, stomp, shuffle. The day watch falls into line. Silas walks past them, heading for the barracks door. He hears Vance shouting orders behind him. Forward, march. Left, right, left, right. The rhythmic tramping of boots fades as Silas enters the quiet, dim hallway of the sleeping quarters. Inside the watch house, the transition is abrupt. The noise of the courtyard is cut off by the thick stone walls. The air is still and smells of floor wax and old wool. Silas walks down the long corridor to the boot room. He sits on the low wooden bench, Creak, sigh. He leans forward and begins to unlace his boots. His fingers are stiff and clumsy. Fumble, pull, loosen. He pulls the first boot off. Thud. His foot, encased in a thick woolen sock, feels suddenly light and vulnerable. He wiggles his toes. Stretch. Relief. He removes the second boot. Thud. He places them in his cubbyhole. Number 42. He stands up in his socks. The stone floor is cold, but it feels grounding. He walks to the gear lockers. He opens his locker. Squeak. He hangs up his greatcoat. The heavy wool settles on the hook with a soft whomp. It retains the shape of his shoulders. He takes off his leather tunic. Unbuckle, slide. He hangs it next to the coat. He is shedding the layers of the night. He is peeling off the armor of the watchman to reveal the civilian beneath. He runs a hand through his hair, which is flattened by the hours of wearing a hat. Rub, scratch. He looks at his reflection in the small steel mirror on the locker door. His eyes are red-rimmed, surrounded by lines of fatigue. But there is a calmness there too, the calmness of a duty fulfilled. He closes the locker. Click. He picks up his personal bag, a small canvas sack containing his book and his pipe. He walks towards the showers. The hot water is waiting. The day is for the others, the rest is for him. He moves slowly now, a sleepwalker in his own home, guided by the promise of the soft, warm bed that awaits him at the end of the hall. Silas enters the steam gallery of the watchhouse, a vaulted chamber lined with white ceramic tiles that gleam in the low light. This is where the grime of the shift is washed away. He hangs his towel on a brass hook. Clink. Rustle. He steps into a shower stall. The floor is slated to prevent slipping, warm beneath his bare feet due to the underfloor heating pipes. He turns the large four-spoked iron handle. Scree. Thunk. The water does not spray. It falls in a heavy, steady curtain from a wide copper rose. Splash. Drum. Splash. It is hot, drawn directly from the thermal exchange of the city's engine. He steps under the stream. Gasp. Sigh. The heat hits his frozen shoulders like a physical weight, melting the tension stored in the muscles. He stands there for a long minute, head bowed, letting the water drum against his skull and run down his spine. The air fills with thick, white steam. He takes a bar of rough pumice soap from the dish. Scrape, lather. He scrubs his hands, working the grit into the calluses to remove the grease of the winches and the soot of the lamps. Scrub, rinse. The grey suds swirl around his feet and vanish down the drain. Gurgle, gone. He washes his face, the hot water stinging slightly on his wind-chapped cheeks. He smells the soap, unscented, clean, and honest. It is the smell of the earth, not the sky. He turns the handle back. Scree, clunk. The water stops, the silence returns, heavier now in the humid air. He steps out, reaching for his towel. It is rough, dried on a heated rail. He rubs himself dry vigorously. Rub. Friction. His skin is pink and warm. The cold of the upper atmosphere has been banished. He wraps the towel around his waist and walks back down the corridor, leaving wet footprints that evaporate quickly on the warm stone. Silas reaches the heavy oak door of his personal quarters, room 7. He inserts his key. Click, turn, thud. He steps inside and closes the door, sliding the iron bolt home. Clack. The room is small, a stone cell carved into the thickness of the watchhouse wall, but it is his sanctuary. The first thing he does is address the light. The sun is now fully up outside, threatening to invade his sleep. He walks to the window. He unlatches the day shutters, heavy wooden panels lined with thick wool felt. Unlatch, swing. He pulls them shut. Thump, seal. The bright morning light is instantly extinguished, replaced by a deep, comforting gloom. The room is now a cave. He strikes a match. Scritch flare. He lights a single beeswax candle on his bedside table. Flicker. Glow. The flame casts long, soft shadows against the stone. The room smells of old books and dried lavender. He walks to his wardrobe. He takes out his sleeping shift, a garment of soft, worn flannel. He dresses slowly. Rustle. Soft. The fabric is loose and warm, a stark contrast to the stiff leather and wool of his uniform. He folds his towel and places it on the rack. He picks up his pocket watch from the table where he left it. He winds it one last time. Crank, click, crank. He sets it down. The ticking is the only sound in the room, a slow, steady heartbeat that matches his own slowing pulse. Tick, tock, tick, tock. He is no longer a guardian. He is a resident of the dark, safe inside his own private night, while the rest of the world begins its day. Before resigning himself to the bed, Silas performs his final winding down ritual. He moves to the small cast iron stove in the corner of the room. It is banked low, glowing with a dull red heat. He places a small copper pan on top. Clang. He pours a cup of milk from a jug kept on the cool windowsill. Glug. Swirl. He adds a pinch of nutmeg and a spoonful of honey. He stirs it with a wooden spoon. Clink. Stir. He watches the steam rise from the milk, curling in the candlelight. He does not rush. This is nourishment for the spirit as much as the body. When the milk is hot, he pours it into his favorite mug, a chipped clay vessel he bought from a ground trader years ago. Pour. Steam. He sits in the wingback chair by the stove. Creak. Settle. He wraps his hands around the warm mug. He takes a sip. Sip. Swallow. It is sweet and creamy, coating his throat and settling warm in his stomach. He picks up a book from the table, The Flora of the Lowlands. He opens it to a marked page. He reads a paragraph about the oak trees of the ancient forests. Turn page, rustle. He reads about roots that go deep into the soil, about shade and stillness. He is grounding himself. He is reminding his mind that there is a world that does not float, a world that is heavy and still. He finishes the milk. Gulp. He closes the book. Thud. He places the mug on the floor. He stretches his arms over his head, feeling his spine crack gently. Stretch. Pop. The final tension leaves him. He is ready. Silas stands up from the chair and approaches his bed. It is a narrow bunk built into the alcove, but the mattress is thick, stuffed with cloud down, the softest feathers of the high-altitude geese. He pulls back the heavy quilt. Heave. Rustle. The sheets underneath are made of unbleached cotton, cool and crisp to the touch. He sits on the edge of the bed. The mattress sinks under his weight, embracing him. Creak. Sink. He swings his legs up. He slides down between the sheets. Slide. Rustle. The cool fabric feels good against his warm skin. He pulls the quilt up to his chin. It is heavy, weighted with lead shot in the hem to prevent it from sliding off in the night, providing a comforting pressure that mimics a hug. Pull. Tuck. He wriggles his shoulders into the mattress, finding the hollow that his body has worn over the years. He reaches for his pillow. He punches it once to fluff it. Thump. He lays his head down. Settle. His ear presses against the fabric. He can hear the sound of his own blood pumping, a slow, rhythmic whoosh, whoosh. He looks up at the stone ceiling, lit only by the dying candle. He feels the entire city shifting gently in the wind, a massive rocking cradle suspended in the sky. He is not afraid of the motion. He is part of it. He is a sailor in a stone ship, and the ocean of air is calm. He lets his legs go limp. He lets his hands unclench. He is supported. He is held. Silas reaches out a heavy, lazy hand and picks up the brass snuffer from the bedside table. He positions it over the candle flame. Hover, Steady, he lowers it. Puff! The light is extinguished. The room plunges into absolute darkness, save for a faint line of grey light bleeding around the edge of the shutter. The smell of the extinguished wick, a sharp, smoky acridity, drifts past his nose for a second, then fades. He closes his eyes. In the darkness, his other senses expand slightly. He listens. He can hear the muffled sounds of the day beginning outside the thick walls. He hears the faint clang of a distant bell, the 7 o'clock shift change. It sounds miles away. He hears the rumble of a heavy cart. These are not his sounds. They belong to the Sun People. He visualizes the city in his mind's eye. He sees the bridge he inspected. It is firm. He sees the lighthouse beam he watched. It is resting. He sees the whale diving into the clouds. He mentally checks off his list. The watch is ended. The gate is secure. The fire is banked. He releases the responsibility. It floats away from him like a balloon cut loose. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the cool, still air of the room. Inhale, deep. He exhales slowly. Exhale, long. His breathing shifts, becoming shallower and more rhythmic. The thoughts in his head begin to fragment, turning into dream logic. The stone floor becomes a meadow. The sound of the wind becomes the sound of the sea. He is drifting. He is sinking. He is gone. As Silas sinks deeper into the mattress, the heavy velvet of sleep begins to descend, muffling the sharp edges of the waking world. The room is now a capsule of perfect isolation. The thick stone walls of the watch house, built to withstand the collision of clouds, now serve a gentler purpose. They filter the rising clamor of the day into a soft, distant drone. Murmur. It is a sound like the ocean heard through a seashell, constant and soothing. Silas feels the weight of the quilt pressing down on him, a physical reminder of gravity in a world that defies it. Press, heavy. The tension in his legs, the result of climbing 1,000 stairs, begins to unspool. The muscles lengthen and soften. Relax, release. He is no longer walking the high wire of the wind. He is horizontal, grounded on a raft of feathers. The faint smell of the extinguished candle lingers, a ghost of beeswax mixing with the clean, neutral scent of the cotton sheets. In the darkness, the visual world has vanished. There are no more gauges to read, no more horizons to scan, no more signals to interpret. There is only the sensation of warmth spreading from his core to his extremities. Warmth, flow. His breathing has slowed to a tidal rhythm, a deep inhale that expands his ribs against the mattress, and a long exhale that sinks him further down. He is safe. The door is bolted. The shutters are sealed. The city outside can spin and shout and trade, but in here, time has stopped. He is the keeper of his own peace now, guarding the borders of his dreams with the same diligence he guarded the streets. Expand your awareness now, drifting gently upwards from the sleeping watchman, up through the stone ceiling of the barracks, up through the slate roof, until you are hovering silently above the city of Aethelgard in the bright morning light. See the city not as a place of bustle and commerce, but as a masterpiece of stability. It is a vast island of granite and limestone, floating serenely in the sea of the sky. Float, drift, feel the immense slow buoyancy of the rock. It does not jitter or shake. It sways with a majestic hydraulic grace, riding the air currents like a great ship at anchor. Sway, steady. Below the city, the keel stones hum with their deep, magical resonance, a low frequency that vibrates through every street and building, binding them together. Thrum, hold. The clouds drift past the foundations, parting around the stone like water around a bow. Part, flow. The wind whistles through the riggings of the windmills and the cables of the bridges, a song of high-altitude freedom. But the city itself is solid. It is heavy. It is permanent. To be a sleeper in this city is to be held in the palm of a giant hand. You are protected from the fall by miles of rock and centuries of magic. The sunlight glints off the bridge of morning, sending beams of pure white light down into the shadows, but you remain in the cool blue shade of the watch house. You are aware of the light, but you do not need to be in it. You are a creature of the stone, heavy and still, anchored deep in the bedrock of the sky. The narrative of the Night Watch is drawing to a close, but the cycle of the city is eternal. We have followed Silas from the first bell of the evening to the final bolt of the morning. We have walked the wind-swept promenades, inspected the silent gears, and greeted the dawn. Now the baton has been passed. The day watch is on the wall, their eyes scanning the horizon, their boots ringing on the cobblestones. March, watch. The great clepsydra continues to pour its water, counting the hours of the sun. The cloud whale is miles away, diving deep into the vapor. The baker's ward is empty of dough and full of bread. All the tasks are done, all the checks are complete. There is nothing left for you to do. You can let go of the responsibility. You can let go of the vigilance. You can simply exist in this pause, this deep breath between the shifts. You are safe in the hands of the successors. You are warm in the heart of the rock. The story is moving away from the details of the world, the brass, the iron, the glass, and moving towards the abstract peace of rest. You are no longer following a map. You are drifting on a current of pure relaxation. The wind outside is a lullaby. The motion of the city is a cradle. You are part of the timeless rhythm of the high air, a passenger on a cloud that is slowly dissolving into the blue. As the image of the floating city begins to fade, allow the sensory details to dissolve into a soft, comforting mist. Let the sound of the wind chimes soften into a gentle, rhythmic pulse. Pulse, quiet. Let the smell of the ozone and the roasting coffee fade away, leaving only the memory of clean, cold air. You are no longer watching Silas. You are becoming the atmosphere of the room itself. You are the warmth in the wall. You are the stillness in the stone. You are the heavy velvet shadow in the corner. The distinct shapes of the towers and bridges are losing their edges, melting into a soft grey blur. Blur, soft. The weight of the great coat is gone. The cold of the iron railing is gone. What remains is the feeling of gravity, the golden anchor that pulls you down into the bed. You are sinking through the mattress, down through the stone floor of the watch house, down into the deep magnetic core of the floating island. You are grounding yourself. You are heavy, slow, and dark. The narrative is releasing you. The words are becoming slower, spaced further apart. Slow, space, sleep. There is no more story to follow. There is no more altitude to maintain. There is only the deep, abiding peace of the off-duty hours. You have walked, you have watched, and now you rest. The candle in the watchman's room has long since been extinguished, the wick cold and black. The room is a sanctuary of perfect darkness, a small cube of night preserved against the day. Silas, the keeper of the city's sleep, has now joined the ranks of the dreamers. The bard closes the heavy leather book of chronicles, the pages settling together with the softest whisper of parchment. Shh! Close. The ink is dry. The quill is laid to rest. The story of the floating city is finished, locked away in the library of dreams. We reach for the single candle that has illuminated our journey through the hours. The flame flickers, casting long, dancing shadows one last time. We take a breath. Puff! The light is extinguished. The smoke drifts up, a thin grey line vanishing into the dark. The darkness is complete, but it is not empty. It is filled with the warmth of the story we have shared. It wraps around you like the heavy cloud-down quilt. You are safe. You are still. You are home. Sleep now, traveller of the high air. The wind will hold you. The stone will protect you. Sleep deep and sleep well. Good night.